In this episode of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the two new team members on the Washington Capitals, and then we talk about a very special milestone for one Washington Capitals center. Locked On Capitals starts right now.
Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome in to this edition of Locked On Capitals. As always, my name is Dan Holme, and I host this podcast. You can find me on Twitter, DanCaps218, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen or view of the day. We're free and available on all the major platforms. All right, in this episode, we are going to talk about that very special center on the Washington Capitals. He's coming up on a big milestone. And then we're going to talk about two new players on the Washington Capitals. Actually, one of them's not too new. He's actually been here before, but we'll get to all of that coming up. So let's get right to it. We are going to talk about that special center for the Washington Capitals. It's a name that should be very familiar to all Washington Capitals fans. That is one Nick Backstrom. The Capitals will hold a pregame ceremony on Saturday, March 26th, prior to hosting the New Jersey Devils to honor alternate captain Nicklas Backstrom for recording his 1,000th NHL point. During the ceremony, Backstrom will receive a special gift from the organization, the National Hockey League, and his teammates. Capitals President Dick Patrick and General Manager Brian McClellan will join Backstrom and his family on the ice during the ceremony. Backstrom became the second player in franchise history to record 1,000 career points on March 9th against the Edmonton Oilers, and the 40th player in NHL history to record 1,000 points with one franchise. Backstrom's 737 career assists at the time of the milestone marked the sixth most through a player's first 1,000 points in NHL history. And hats off to Nick Backstrom. He is often an unsung hero on the Washington Capitals and a guy that eats a steady diet of humble pie. So this will be his night to not shrug off all the applause and adulation. It's Nick Backstrom's time to shine. And, like I say, he's a guy that doesn't get a lot of the praise because oftentimes he shrugs off any praise that's given his way. He's kind of a quiet guy, but this is his time to put down that fork full of humble pie and just take it all in. Because as you know, there would be a lot of players, most notably Alex Ovechkin, who would not be nearly the player that he is today if it wasn't for Nick Backstrom. And it's not too often that you find two players that have played together for such a long time together. And Nick Backstrom, who is a great goal scorer in his own right, but he's often known for feeding the puck to Alex Ovechkin at the left circle at his office, they call it, as he slams home those power play goals or just goals in general. And it is a great night to celebrate Nick Backstrom. Backstrom has earned 1,003 points, 263 goals, 740 assists, and 1,043 games with the Capitals. He ranks first in franchise history in assists, 740, and second in points, 1,003. Games played, 1,043. Power play points, 407. Overtime goals 9, and fourth in goals 263, and then one more, power play goals 80. So quite a list of accomplishments for Nick Backstrom, and what a great night for Nick Backstrom. And it'll be a great night to attend as they take on the New Jersey Devils, a team that is not playing too well. But if you're looking for a reason to come out and watch a Capitals hockey game, what better reason than to come out and give a tip of the hat to Nick Backstrom, who's done so much for this franchise. Nick Backstrom is one of the players that's best known for on his last contract doing it without an agent. He kind of took the lead of Alex Ovechkin, and they have just quite a history together. Like I say, there would be many players on the Washington Capitals that would not be nearly as good of players today if it wasn't for Nick Backstrom. He feeds those great passes all the time. And his absence was noticed earlier in the year when he was injured. And it's just so great to have him back out there. I mean, we have some great centers on the Washington Capitals, but I mean, when it's Alex and it's Nick on the same line together, that's when you really notice the chemistry. I know that sometimes they have Kuznetsov on that line with Ovechkin, but It just seems like there is such great chemistry with Nick Backstrom and Alex Ovechkin. Since his NHL debut on October 5th, 2007, Backstrom is fifth player to record 1,000 points during that span, joining Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, Patrick Kane, and Evgeny Malkin. During this span, Backstrom's additionally ranks first in the NHL with 740 assists and second with 407 power play points, despite ranking 17th in games played. He became the first player from his 2006 NHL draft class to reach the mark, and he holds a 60-point lead over the next highest scoring player from his class. That's right, Mr. Hot Dogs, Phil Kessel, 943. So just he stands out in his class. And like I say, he's not a flashy guy. He's not an Alex Ovechkin that is, hanging out at all these Hollywood parties or, especially Alex in his younger day. He was on commercials and everything. Nick Backstrom is just a guy that kind of just sits back and makes really great NHL plays. His NHL IQ, it's through the roof. And he is one of the players they consider the nucleus. You would, in that same conversation, include Alex Ovechkin and TJ Oshie, John Carlson, those players there that are the players they refer to when the Capitals are in win-now mode. And the Capitals want to make good use of Nick Backstrom and Alex Ovechkin, to be honest with you, as that window is closing ever so more every year. So just a great night for Nick Backstrom, and just a great accomplishment. In addition to becoming the 93rd player in NHL history to reach the milestone, Backstrom became the 6th Swedish player in NHL history to record 1,000 points. Backstrom ranks 4th among Swedish players in NHL history with 740 assists. His .96 points per game ranks 2nd among Swedish players with at least 1,000 points, only behind Mattis Sundin, who averaged 1.00 points per game and is the all-time Swedish points leader with 1,349. So just a tip of the cap to Nick Backstrom on a great career. And we look forward to many great years with Nick Backstrom. As he was one of the guys on the team back in 2018 when the Capitals hoisted that Stanley Cup over their head. It was something that was long eluded the Washington Capitals, and with Backstrom and Ovechkin on the same team together, it just seemed like it was only a matter of time before that was going to happen. And alas, it did in 2018. And the Caps look to do that again before Backstrom and Ovechkin retire. They are in a position now where they're in the wild card spot. And they made some acquisitions at the trade deadline, and they believe that they stand a good chance at doing well in the playoffs. It remains to be seen if this team has the depth that they need, but I think that they are in good hands with Nick Backstrom, and just great news for Nick Backstrom, and congratulations on a great career so far. So in the next segment, we are going to talk about the two new Washington Capitals, Jonas Larsson and Marcus Johansson, and just the great acquisitions that they are, some needed experience on the Capitals. But first, we're going to talk about BetOnline. It's that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and players' props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season, and it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting in your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, before we get going on the next segment here, tune in to Locked On Now. It is Locked On's team of local experts. So whatever team you follow, I know it's not just Capitals fans out there. They have you covered NHL-wide. Keep it locked to Locked On Now, and you will be updated quicker than any other news source out there on all the action in the NHL. Thanks, Locked On Now. All right, in this next segment, like I talked about, we are going to talk about some of the new players, and a player that's not so new to the Washington Capitals, but it's been 5 years. Can you believe it? 5 years since Marcus Johansson has been on the Washington Capitals. He left the team in 2017, 1 year before the Capitals won the Stanley Cup. It's time to right that wrong, isn't it, Marcus Johansson, and get that cup with the Washington Capitals, a sort of coming of home of sorts. Upon being traded from the Capitals 5 years ago to the New Jersey Devils, the winger started to go by Johansson instead of Johansson, surprising many who had grown accustomed to pronouncing the last name like Johansson. Had the Capitals really been getting it wrong for 7 years? Not quite. After being reacquired Monday for this year's trade deadline from the Seattle Kraken, Johansson politely told reporters that it is indeed Yo. Somewhere along the way, there was a mix-up in Johansson. Johansson was too polite to correct it. It kind of reminds me of a lot of players out there that come from overseas, and they're just like, yeah, I'm in America now. I don't want to rock the boat. See Jacob Vrana, or Jakob Vrana, as he is actually supposed to be referred to. But now he's returned to the franchise that perhaps knows him best, allowing him to be himself. The Capitals, meanwhile, wasted no time in trying to have Johansson feel right at home. For Tuesday's game against the St. Louis Blues, coach Peter Laviolette slotted Johansson. See how I'm mixing it up back and forth? You guys are never going to get it straight. On the first line alongside Evgeny Kuznetsov and Alex Ovechkin, two players Johansson played with regularly over his first stint in Washington. There are, after all, only 8 players on the Capitals who remain from the 16-17 season. Johansson's last in the district following that year, which ended a brutal Game 7 loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Bitter memories I don't really want to talk about. Johansson was shipped out of town so the Capitals could re-sign Kuznetsov and a winger TJ Oshie. Of those 8, all considered part of the Capitals' core. The familiarity, in theory, should help Johansson get caught up to speed quicker. And that was great to see him back. The Capitals are an older team, and they've kind of been, plugging and playing some younger players in there. But as they make their push for the playoffs, they want to make the most of this window that we often hear referred to, that win now mode. And they did that by picking up a familiar face and some great depth. I'm going to say depth at this point, even though he was on the top line. It remains to be seen where Marcus Johansson slots in, in the big picture as they head into the playoffs. I guess it's going to depend on his play. It's going to depend on injury. As we know, we got TJ Oshie coming back at some point. So it's going to remain to be seen where Marcus Johansson fits in. He does have some great goal scoring potential. He's played on a lot of different teams since he left the Capitals in 2017, but wherever he's gone, he's been that steady hand. He has never lived up to that goal scoring potential that he had with the Capitals when he had that 20-plus goal season. Sometimes that's walking in some old slippers, what you're doing. You're comfortable, Laviolette says. I think it makes sense and a little bit more comfortable. The last 5 seasons for Johansson have been anything but smooth. There have been injuries that have kept him off the ice. He missed 20 games last season, and in that span, he's played for a total of 5 different teams. Wow, it's got to be tough on a guy like that to just getting shipped from town to town to town. This story, by the way, is in the Washington Times. The last 5 years for Johansson have been anything but smooth. And after 2+ seasons with New Jersey, Johansson was traded to Boston, signed with Buffalo. In July 2019, they shipped him to Minnesota. This past summer, Seattle took him in the expansion draft. Perhaps the most frustrating leg of Johansson's journey, however, came the season immediately after the Capitals traded him. That year, Washington won the Stanley Cup, leaving Johansson on the outside looking in. And, he's got to be thinking to himself, man, why did that have to happen? Because it wasn't up to Johansson in that case. Like they said that they wanted to bring some more of the Capitals back, Oshie and Kuznetsov. And I think that was pretty sound judgment, to be fair, because, Johansson is good, but where would the Capitals be? Would they have won the Stanley Cup if it wasn't for Oshie and Kuznetsov? I kind of tend to think not. They were quite productive on the Washington Capitals. And after 2+ seasons with New Jersey, Johansson was traded to Boston, like we talked about, and he had kind of a rough go of it there as well. I think that he thought he was poised for bigger and better things, but it didn't seem to work out as he got shuffled around to 5 different teams. All those playoff battles as a member of the Capitals, all those excruciating losses, and Johansson didn't get to reap the reward. Obviously, you want to be part of it and win, Johansson said, but I was also very happy for the guys. You battled for 7 years with him. That's the one goal that we didn't get there. then your friends get a chance to do it. I'm obviously happy for them. It's frustrating not being a part of it, but that's the way it goes. Johansson did come close to finally accomplishing his dream in 2019 with the Bruins, but in the Stanley Cup, the Bruins suffered a 4-1 loss in Game 7 to the Blues. In that series, Johansson scored a goal and tallied an assist in Game 3. And, good things follow Johansson wherever he goes. I think that if he's patient, I think this Capitals team, maybe not this year, but is poised to do some bigger and better things. So Johansson, if they can keep him around, I think that he just might get lucky and get that cup. The experience have made Johansson a different player from the first go round with the Capitals. Teammates Nick Backstrom and Johansson now more responsible on the ice, turning into an all-around player. Johansson agreed, saying he's grown and is excited to show what he can do. It's just that maturity thing. If you think about it, when he was on the Capitals before, he was a much younger man. And I think that he has grown into himself, and I think that he will find a role on this Washington Capitals team. With all the injuries that the Capitals have had, they plugged and played Protas, Leeson, earlier in the season, Hendricks, LaPierre, all of those guys not really seeming to stick as they've bounced up and down from AHL Hershey up to the NHL, back and down, up and down. So I think that that's ultimately what they wanted to do. Brian McClellan wanted to get some players on the cheap. A lot of those, I think both of those players, the former team retained around 50% of their salary. So some great bargain shopping by Brian McClellan, and just a player that he knows. He knows what he has in Marcus Johansson. He doesn't have to think to himself, is he going to slot in and is he going to do a good job? I know he's got a history there of injury, but most NHL players do. So you can't really, judge him too harshly on that. I think that he will fit in fine. And I'm looking forward to what the Capitals have in Marcus Johansson and what they can do with him. Can they make that big push this offseason? Can they hoist a Stanley Cup above their head in 2022? There's so many questions that need to be answered. And did they do enough at the trade deadline? I know those were great acquisitions, picking up Marcus Johansson and Jonas Larson, but was that enough? Some say that they were only going to be able to do it if they picked up a goaltender. So they are all in on Vitek Vanacek and Ilya Samsonov. Let's hope that the additions of Marcus Johansson and Jonas Larson is going to be enough. It's going to be something that's going to propel them over the top. Because if it's not going to be this season, then hopefully it will be next season. All right, after the break, we are going to talk about the other new Washington Capital, Jonas Larson. Yes, he is completely new. There's no history there with Jonas Larson at all. So it remains to be seen how he plays as well. We're looking forward to what he brings to the Capitals. He is going to be a steady hand out there that the Capitals are looking for. Like I say, they had some inconsistency with some of the younger guys. So let's see what Jonas Larson can do. All right, welcome back. Larson is a Capital that they picked up on the trade deadline. Larson is coming off of sports hernia surgery. He was supposed to return to full practice today. That was on trade deadline with Arizona, I'm told, but they canceled practice. Arizona gets a 2023 third-round pick from Washington for Jonas Larson. The Coyotes retain, like I was talking about, 50% for Larson. So that is some great bargain shopping, like I was talking about with Brian McClellan. And he met with the press for the first time. This is what he had to say.
Welcome to DC.
Thank you.
What were your initial thoughts on the trade and coming to Washington?
Yeah, I'm very excited to come here. Come to this team and join them here and have a push for the playoffs.
What excited are you to possibly play in the Stanley Cup playoffs?
Yeah, very excited. It's everyone wants to be in there, so it's going to be it's a little bit left there, but it's going to be fun if we get there.
You're still coming off your surgery. How has that recovery been in the process?
It's been good, actually. Feeling good, and I've been skating for a while now, and it feels good. Just a little left, some small things left. So.
How much longer do you think on the ice that you need?
It's hard to say, but I feel pretty good on the ice, so I haven't really had a timeline on it, but hopefully next week, or if not, it's the week after that, so it's pretty soon.
What were the last few weeks like? I mean, rehabbing, being away from the team, and did you kind of have an idea that you might get moved at the deadline?
Yeah, kind of. We had some talks about it, so it was there. But once you're injured, you're like, okay, it might be harder to move someone. So, it happened, and I'm excited to come here.
What have the coaches told you about possible roles for the team?
Yeah, it's just come in here and kind of play my style, be a good, solid two-way player in that way, and then enjoy the time here.
I know you and Marcus were teammates in Buffalo. What's your level of familiarity with the rest of the guys?
I know Backy a little bit. Played in Brenus, where he's from, so I met him a couple times, and then Connor Sherry, played with him in Buffalo too. So those are the guys.
You were born on Lao. Is that island that's just off of?
Yeah, it's an island. Lao is a smaller place, and the island is Gotland. So it's like a 3-hour ferry from Stockholm.
Did you grow up there too?
Yeah, I grew up there, and then I moved to Gävle when I was like 15 to play hockey.
So I know you mentioned you were excited for the chance to play in the playoffs, but how different is it to go from Arizona and then come here and then be dropped all of a sudden into a playoff?
Yeah, it's a little different. Always coming to a new team, but so far it's been good, and I feel like this group been together for a while, so it's pretty easy to come in here, and they're a confident group, and they know they can do it, so it's fun to come here.
Do you think you said they want you to come play your style? Do you feel like you fit in well with what they do from what you've seen and learned a little bit about what their system is and everything?
Yeah, for sure. I come in and you always want to do your best, I guess, but be solid, give everything that I have, and then we'll see what happens. And you can put me in the wing or you can put me in center, so I think that's a good thing.
Been a pretty good uptick in your offensive output this year as far as points per game. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I probably got a little more ice time, a little more opportunity in Arizona. We're a little lower in there, and so it was fun. Played with some really good players there too. So, and I got a little confidence, and then it started going in for me. So.
Throughout the past couple of years, coaches and players that you've played with and played for have kind of talked about your ability to play against other teams' top lines. I mean, what's the key to playing against other teams' number one units in that regard?
Yeah, you got to know when they're out there. Obviously, first time, and then you got to be responsible and know the situation you're in, and then you're up against good players. They're going to make plays, but take them away as much as you can.
All right, so that was Jonas Larsson as he talks about where he fits in with the Washington Capitals and what kind of game does he bring to the Washington Capitals. So it's been talked about that he might get slotted in on that line with Hathaway and Dowd with Hagelin out, So it's either going to be him or Axel Jonsson Fjällby. I guess it remains to be seen where he fits in there. But, like he said, he's a versatile player. He can play on the wing or center, primarily a left wing, but that's that steady presence that you need out on the ice. And he's not going to make those dumb passes. He's not just going to just hit it down the ice and then have it knocked off by the other player and have them score a goal. Generally speaking, players that have played that long and are at his skill set, they don't have that kind of problems with their game. So I think that Jonas Larsson was a solid pickup. And I think that, it can only go up for Jonas Larsson because he's played on some teams. You talked about that they played on Buffalo, or he played on Buffalo, and he played on with Arizona. So things can only go up for Jonas Larsson. He's a guy that's been in the league a long time, and kind of it's interesting that they're getting these players that have some familiarity with Nick Backstrom. As you know, Marcus Johansson also has a history there, so it just seems like they're getting together these players that have kind of like-minded thought process, and again also that they got him on a good deal. So I think that it's going to be interesting to see the Washington Capitals and how they play with these new players. Are they going to be able to propel them over the top? I think that on paper it seems like a really solid deal picking up Jonas. If you look at a lot of the players out there, I don't think that they would have been able to afford them, or the Capitals would have had to give up too much to get them. I'm looking at you, Max Domi. I know that Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick, they had talked about that. It seemed like Max Domi was almost a lock for the Washington Capitals, but, Carolina has him, and more power to him. But I think the Washington Capitals will be fine with the forwards that they have out on the ice. I just think, like I've talked about in previous episodes, they need to solidify that goaltending. And, the only other thing I wish they would have picked up is some depth defensemen, but that is above my pay grade. That is why they pay Brian McClellan the big money. I'm just happy that he didn't make one of those blunders, like that Philip Forsberg deal, if you think back, where they got Erat and Lada. Oh, it brings back horrible memories. I still sometimes wake up shaking. I'm kidding, thinking about that. But, like I say, I think the Capitals are poised to make a run. They will make the playoffs. They have the Rangers above them and the Blue Jackets underneath them, and there's not enough runway left for the Blue Jackets to catch the Washington Capitals. So I think it should be, kind of an easy transition. As it stands now, I saw it posted on Twitter. There was a post, or it was on NHL.com as well, is that if the playoffs started today, the Washington Capitals would be taking on the Florida Panthers. And that's kind of a scary thought, too. I mean, the Florida Panthers are stacked out there this year. They made those big acquisitions. They have Claude Giroux on that team. They have Bobrovsky and Net. It would be a big opponent out there. But, I mean, if you're going to go and play in the playoffs and eventually a Stanley Cup, you are going to have to play against a tough opponent. And I'm just glad it's not the Penguins the first round, because that would be difficult. I mean, I guess anything is possible, but as it stands right now, if the Washington Capitals were to start the playoffs tonight, it would be against the Florida Panthers. So let's just hope that this core can gel together. Let's hope that Larson and Johansson, they can all kind of see where they fit in. We'll see what players we get back. Are we going to get Oshie back? How long is Van Riemsdyk going to be out? There's so many questions that need to be answered. And then who do they have in AHL if one of these players is not ready? And then who are they going to slot in as the number 2 netminder? Is Samsonov going to be able to be up for the task to take this team through the playoffs? Because it can't be Vanacek carrying the mail in net every night. They need to have that answer as a number 2 in net. I've banged the drum for him for weeks now, but Zach Fucale, I think, has got to be the number 2 netminder if the Capitals have any chance of going anywhere in the playoffs. So that is the Locked On Capitals podcast for today. I want to thank you for joining me today. And if you're watching it or listening to it, thank you for listening. And now make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Host Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone help you become the expert of your fantasy league. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And I thank you again for listening and or watching. If you're listening to this, go on to YouTube and type in Locked On Capitals and watch an episode and see what you think there. Sometimes it's more engaging to watch other than just listen. Or if you're just listening on your morning commute, I understand. That's how I listen to a bulk of my podcasts as well. All right. Thank you for listening and or watching. We will talk to you again tomorrow.